go.
Good. Okay, so this is the National 9/11 Truth Teleconference for 7/31/13. Welcome, everybody. First thing we always do is confirm the minutes from the previous meeting that were circulated. Does anybody have any objection to that?
No.
Hearing none, we'll take the minutes as circulated by Craig as approved.
Ken.
Yes, Craig, go ahead.
Since we just started the recording, should I read that roll just so that it's on the recording?
Oh yes, of course. I'm sorry. Thank you, Craig.
Okay, so I have Barry Zwicker, Ned Delaney, Barbara Honegger, Adam Ruff, Adam Syed, Paul Zaremka, James Hufford, Lorenzo Fine, Craig McKee, Mark Basile, Dwayne Deeps, Shelton Langford, Mike Booth. Did I miss anyone?
Okay.
Okay, if not.
Now we move on to approving the draft agenda. Does anybody have any amendment for the draft agenda? It's circulated. Okay. Well, I don't hear any requests for new items, so we will therefore take the draft agenda as our agenda for this evening and proceed. The first item on the agenda is our feature presentation for tonight, a campaign for an independent study to conclusively confirm or refute the 2009 paper by Harrod et al. That will be Mark Basile. Is that the correct pronunciation, Mark? Mark Basile?
Basile, or Basile.
Mark? Mark?
Yes, no, it's Basile or Basile.
Basile. I'm sorry. Okay, Mark Basile. Okay, and I'll let him get us acquainted with the design of the study and whatever else he wishes to inform us about, and then we'll open it up for questions. Go ahead, Mark. Thank you very much for being here.
All right. So basically, I guess the first thing I'd say is just even in the line item description, it talks about to conclusively confirm or refute the 2009 paper. I'm not really looking to conclusively confirm or refute. I'm really just looking to be a confirmatory paper in most part. I've seen what I've seen in the dust samples that I've dealt with so far, and I don't really plan on refuting anything because I know what I've seen, and it's really just a matter of whether the samples are still active when I actually test them and so on. But, you know, the whole thing of refuting isn't really where I'm at here. I don't think it's even something that's on the table. But I am going to tell what I find, and that will be what I find. And but, you know, but that's really just a minor point here. The other things I guess I'd want to say is, you know, I've read a lot of stuff. People have, John Michael in particular, and Rick Shattuck, have put a lot of work into trying to get this thing moved forward. It originally started with Shane Geiger way back, and I thought it was a good idea to basically get some independent labs to, you know, look at some samples and, you know, just look at the results that they come up with. I mean, that's in essence what it's all about. So what I'm really trying to do is, in essence, confirm and then advance what's already been published. What I'm looking for really is just support. I'm not looking for money from anybody, because if I get money from somebody, it creates, if not in essence reality, at least the illusion to some people of a lack of independence and liberty. You know, and I'd use the analogs of basically like tobacco studies that funded, you know, the things, and, well, hey, the researchers came up with what they were looking for. Or government-funded studies, they find what they're looking for, and otherwise it doesn't really get published. I'm looking for support, but I'm not really looking for money from people. I want independence and the liberty to do things the way I think they need to be done. So what I've basically asked for at this point is about $5,000. Well, I think it's exactly $5,000. And I think that's an appropriate amount to basically get us some answers that can confirm what's already been put out there. if that happens and I see that people are really willing to contribute, I'd like to actually get about $10,000 is more where my original proposal started. And I think that can basically confirm and then actually move the science a little bit more forward, if you will. So really all I'm looking for is just endorsements from people to, help this project along. I'm not going to take any money from this for my personal expenses for travel or really anything. Every penny will be accounted for, and I've seen some questions raised about, well, if any funds are left over, where's that money going to go? And I would basically contribute any funds that were left over, although I'll straightforward that I think the only monies that will be left over would basically be the difference between me doing some additional analytical work that needed to be done and not doing that work. So it's only going to be a few $100s that doesn't get spent, conceivably. But I would forward it to another organization that has to do with 9/11, whether it's architects and engineers or, one of these charity organizations that sends money to people that, have been harmed by the event. And but I'm really not looking for anything individually. So really I'm just looking to do a confirmation study and get some help. I mean, if you want to get into technical details about what what it is that I want to do, I basically want to replicate the work that's been done as far as SEM work, DSC, that's the calorimetric work that shows the exotherm from the nanothermite, analyzing the residues from the reactions, taking it a little bit further, doing some Auger work, which can basically determine if there's elemental aluminum present, or maybe doing some transmission electron microscope work, which again can confirm elemental aluminum, those types of works, as well as GC work at looking at the gas reaction products that come off from this thing, that type of work.
Okay. Before we open up to other comments and questions, can you give a little bit of your background for the benefit of people who don't know you, Mark?
Sure. Yeah. I'm a chemical engineer by education. I went to WPI. I got a Bachelor of Science from them. And my professional career, though, has basically stemmed even from before I finished my BS. I was already working in industry. And I've worked for, what is it? I don't know. It's got to be close to 30 years. So I got my BS in '85, and I was working a couple of years before that in industry. But a lot of what I do, or what I do right now, actually, is I design analytical instrumentation, optically based. For instance, fluorescence detectors, UV absorbance detectors, visible light absorbance detectors, refractive index detectors. I've worked on a number of different things, which I can't really get into the details because of, call it trade secrets or whatever you want, but I can't talk about them. And but I basically am a chemical engineer. I understand a lot of chemistry. I deal in my early career really dealt with a lot of metallurgy because of the company that I was working for. So I've done a lot of metallurgy, a lot of various analytical work. Which doesn't involve metallurgy, but just basic analysis of water. The company that I work for is an analytical instrumentation company, and I basically work within the group building new detectors. I basically, help design the basic things, then do what are called proof of principle experiments. You can sit down and design something, and then you should, if you really understand it, basically be able to say what the instrument will be able to do when you actually turn it on. And then I basically do experiments to show that it does what we say it's going to do. And,
okay. All right. I think that's
kind of what I do.
Thanks. Great. But your plan is to publish the results of your study if you're successful in getting the funding for it, right?
Yes. In one way or another, this information will get into the public domain, whether it's through a mainstream journal, whether it's the Journal of 9/11 Studies, or whether it has to be me standing there and reading something into a YouTube video. One way or another, this information will get into the public domain. That's paramount, actually.
Okay. I imagine there are a number of people with questions aside from myself, so let's make a quick stack here, and then we'll go ahead with that. Who would like to?
Barb Honegger has a question.
Barb, who else? Barb, Dwayne. Okay, Dwayne, who else? Okay, then Barb, Dwayne, and then myself. Go ahead, Barb.
Okay, actually I have 3 questions that probably everybody has. What is the source of your dust samples, and what is the chain of custody or provenance of those? Number 1. And number 2, can you include checking for evidence of nuclear event byproducts per Prager's work and Dr. Ed Spencer and others like that?
Okay, well, the sources of my dust at this point are I have one sample in common with work of Carrot and Jones and all, and that's a sample from Jeanette McKinley. My other samples have come from 2 from individuals and then 1 from an organization. I can't give their names because they haven't given me clearance to give their names or anything, but basically that's where they come from.
Is the Jeanette McKinley sample from Stephen Jones?
No, it was sent to me directly from Jeanette.
Well,
I have her correspondence. Yes. I have her
Uh-huh.
correspondence indicating such.
Okay, well, that's wonderful.
This is James Hufford. I'd like to get on the stack, too.
Okay, James, I'll put you right
let me just address her other 2 questions. So that addresses the sources. Chain of custody. Again, I have, what do I have actually? From Jeanette, I have correspondence. From one of the individuals, they actually made some photographic records. When I took the sample from them, I really just noted in my notebooks what had transpired. And I did that with all of my samples. One of them came from a museum, which hasn't given me authorization to use the museum's name, so, I can't really say who they are at this point, but it was a museum. And
But presumably when you publish the results, you'd mention the sources.
Well, I, will do whatever I have to get around it. I mean, I'm not going to exclude the sample simply because somebody doesn't want me to use their name. I'll present the data, and people can take it for what they do. Because I look at it this way, that I'm going to put out what I'm going to put out, and people can call me a liar, or people can believe me, and that's up to them. I'm just going to tell them what I found. And, prosperity and the future can do with it what they will, but I'm going to put the information out there. And as far as the nuclear thing goes, I think that I'll have to look into that, and I have actually been curious to explore this whole regime a little bit more, because I personally don't give it a lot of credence, but I, on the other hand, do not dismiss anything at this point in time. And,
well, what's important is to know that it's based upon the actual published report of dust analysis by the USGS and the Department of Energy. So you need to get those reports and go from there, and you don't have to take Prager's word for it. But if you give your email here sometime on the call, I'll send you those links.
Okay. No, but what I was getting at is I think that some of the techniques that I'll be using here would actually expose if there were various isotopes there. It's just at what level they were going to expose it. So
at least you won't not look for them.
Oh, no. I would look for anything that was there.
Okay, good.
Okay, thanks, Barb. Dwayne, you were next on the steps?
Yeah. So my question is, have you read T. Mark Hightower's blog on this subject?
I am not sure by name that I have. Can you?
Okay, I suggest you read it.
Was?
T as in Tom, Mark Hightower. And the particular issue is the variability between samples, between the different chips of the different dust samples.
Yeah.
in terms of energy per mass, he found to be extremely high. And I just would say take precautions that you don't repeat that.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what you mean, but are you talking about like within given red chips?
Yes.
Well, I expect actually a lot of variability.
Well, this is extremely high. Extremely high.
Especially with passing time. I really don't know what the chemistry is of what's going on inside these chips completely over time. So, you know,
Yeah.
I think that just, you know, can add to it. There might have been some to begin with. And I think there's a lot of physical explanations for why there could be a lot of variability, too. So.
Okay, I'll just leave it at that.
Thanks, Dwayne. I have two questions for you. This is Ken. I have two questions for you, Mark. The first one has to do with your use of the term advance. So the first question I have is, what do you mean by advancing it? How would you hope to be able to advance the work up here at all?
Well, basically what I'm talking about there is, for instance, you know, they did great work. They really showed a lot of convincing evidence that something's amiss, if you will, here. But, for instance, they didn't show actually that there was elemental aluminum within the basic matrix of the chips themselves. That would be an advancement to show conclusively that there was elemental aluminum in there. Because elemental aluminum doesn't really exist in nature. Okay, it's something that nature abhors because it's simply so reactive. Another example would be that, okay, they got these chips to react in a DSC, but they didn't actually take the off-gas products and analyze those in any way. That would be another example of an advancement. It's just adding to the information base, that's all.
Okay. And I actually have two more questions. One has to do with the expenses. Can you just give us a brief overview of what expenses you expect will be entailed in this study?
Well, I submitted something a couple of times actually now to the A&E group, and I can be more than happy to send it to you guys again. But basically, some of the analytical techniques that I'm looking to use, like FTIR, Fourier transform infrared, or even Raman spectroscopy, I think is actually a little bit more useful. It does the same type of thing, but it can be a little bit less destructive. Those types of analysis, you know, for a given sample can be $250 to $400 a piece. You know, to get somebody to look at something in a SEM with energy dispersive X-ray analysis to give you the elemental composition of the material that you're looking at, you know, again, it's $250 a sample, or ESCA and Auger type work can be, you know, $500 an hour, those types of things. So, you know, looking at several samples and spending an hour with each one, you know, it adds up quickly.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. The only other thing I wanted to ask you was about the question of independence, because I'm hearing you say on the call that your purpose is to confirm, which of course, you know, those of us on the call hope. Well, I'm sure we all would agree that we hope that that's the end result of your work. However, what would you say to somebody who says, well, yeah, but, you know, you said from the beginning that you just wanted to confirm it, so you were biased in your approach. What would you say to that?
Well, what I'm going to say is that, you know, I'm going to run analysis and I'm going to put those results out. And the main thing that I'm worried about is the DSC work, and I'm really just worried that the chips over 10 years have changed.
Yeah.
And they may not ignite. You know, so I'm going to put out whatever I find, and I think that that in and of itself is worthy of whatever it is, because, you know, I'm just a scientist. You know, that's all I do. Every day I basically go into a lab and I watch what empirically happens around me, and I try to understand it. And just because something doesn't work the way you expected it to doesn't mean that you're not learning from it, and that, you know, it's just you need to understand exactly why, say, for instance, this chip didn't ignite. Maybe it's because, well, the aluminum sits there for 6 years in a matrix and it changes, and it isn't aluminum anymore. So
right.
I think that I'm going to do my work, but the thing that I've said before publicly in some of my videos and whatnot is that we need a lot more people doing this. And so really all I'm trying to do is put another stake in the ground to get a few people to open their eyes to say, maybe I should take a leap of faith here and go do something, rather than just poo-pooing. So.
Right. Or maybe I should throw my iron in the fire too. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. And then James, you were next on the stat.
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm relieved to hear that you are going to let the chips fall where they may.
Oh, no, you didn't say that.
Oh,
Boo.
sorry. But
I'm going to report what I
yeah. Okay. But my question
doesn't mean anything necessarily. You need to understand the physics behind what's happening.
Yeah, sure.
Because I know what I've seen in samples so far.
Yeah, I understand. It would be hard for any informed person to come in completely unbiased. I mean, that would be a little too much to ask probably at this point. But my question is, have you or will you anticipate whatever will be the likely substantive criticisms of your work and your conclusions, and be prepared to stick around and answer those criticisms?
Sure. If I put it out there, I'm going to answer to it.
Well, that isn't exactly what happened with Herrett and Jones. They weren't going to answer anybody that hadn't published in a vetted journal, and so a lot of the criticism was sort of left unanswered.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm not going to spend the next 10 years of my life answering every person that comes at me, but I will respond and answer certain questions that I think are valid and pertinent, and I have no problem with that.
I think that'll be very helpful.
Lorenzo Stack, please.
Okay. Lorenzo, you're up.
Okay, Mark. Your comments about elemental aluminum and having it suddenly disappear into its oxide. I'm just kind of curious, if you are to find elemental aluminum, then whoever produced the stuff probably did a fair amount of homework in order to isolate this aluminum from oxygen.
Yeah, to actually get it to be what it is inside there, yes, they did a very large amount of work, actually, I think.
And that's all I had to say was that commentary.
Thanks, Lorenzo. Would anybody else like to make a comment or ask a question? Well, then I guess we have, it's time to thank our special guest tonight, Mark Basile, and also to remind you again what kind of support it is that you're looking for from us or from anyone at this point, Mark, so that we can note that in the minutes.
What I'm looking for?
Mm-hmm.
Really just support. Simple statements of, and I think there's something that I need to do too, and I've been asked actually by John Michael so far to do a couple of things along that lines, but basically what I see me needing to do is put together a short statement, because I subscribe to, I like to be brief, okay, and concise. I don't like going on and on and on, and I know John Michael's put together, a huge amount of information backing why this should be done and so on, but I tend more towards the side of brevity, but basically saying that this is really me, this is what I really want to do, and, explaining to a degree. I'm not going to benefit from this in any way. My personal time and travel and so on will be covered by myself. I'm really just looking to cover lab expenses, but basically put together a statement myself saying that I back this whole effort, okay, which I haven't really done up to this point, and then really just looking for your organizations to also say, we also back it. That's really all, in just some very concise and simple manner to say, you know, support this. We want to see the work done, and, you know, that's all. That's all I'm really for.
Does your website has a donation page on it, right, or donation option, right?
Yes, it does. I think there's actually two of them that still exist, though. One of them seems to go still towards the fund organization. I think it's called Aetna. It's like ANTA or something to that effect, that Rick Shattuck is involved with. And then there's some of the donations that go to my personal PayPal account, which are marked as donations. So I have a clear, because I use my PayPal for other stuff too. But all my donations are clearly marked as donations, and all of that is being tracked. If the information's actually being sent to Rick on like a semi-monthly basis, so that he can update things on the website and so on as to where we're at.
Right. Are you also keeping track of endorsements on the website? Is there a way for you to list those so that people are aware of how much support you're gathering in the 9/11 Truth movement?
I'm not aware that there is one, but I'm sure that would be a simple thing to be added. You know, just
I think that would be probably useful too. I would think. Okay, so would you like the 9/11 Truth Teleconference to consider next month an endorsement of your project?
Yes, I would.
Okay, then we'll put that on the agenda for next month so people have notice, and we'll let you know it. If you'd like to join us again for the discussion, of course, you're always welcome.
Okay. Yeah, at this point, I think we've raised about $1,500 of the 5K that I'm looking for. So we're almost a third of the way there. And with the funds that exist, I can actually begin to do some work. But what I'm going to actually start with is primer samples, and basically proving that primer samples cannot do what the nanothermite does. That's where I was going to basically start with the work.
Is primer what the other one said it was? The people that claimed
it was Millet and
Millet. Yeah. Great, excellent. I was going to ask you about that. That's excellent. Cool.